Alex?
Mm-hmm.
Assalamu alaikum everybody. I wanted to thank you all for joining us this evening. We're going to start off with Yara Bazi reading the Du'at Nabi Yusuf, followed by Muhammad Ayad reciting Quran in Arabic, and Nadine Bazi reciting Quran in English. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي كرتنتني ملك وعلمتني تأويل أحاديث فات السماوات والأرض أنت ولي دنيا آخرة توفني مسمع حقني صالحين. صدق الله العظيم.
لتعجيل فرج مولانا وإمامنا صاحب العصر والزمان، رحم الله من رفع صوته بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير. الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور. الذي خلق سبع سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير. ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير. وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير. إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Following tonight's lecture, we will be having a Q&A session. We will be passing around papers and pencils for everyone to put their questions on, and we'll also be collecting them. Our speaker for tonight is Sheikh Azaruni. Please help me in welcoming him to the podium with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mindful that no one can glorify Him as He deserves, and no one can count His bounties the way it should be done. Salutation to the most noble of all messengers, Prophet Muhammad and his pure progenies. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I think we need the sound. Is the sound okay? Okay. قال الله العظيم في محكم كتابه أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا. And do not backbite one another. Does any one of you like to eat the flesh of his or her dead brother? Last night I went back to the first 183 Surah Al-Baqarah, the ayah, and in an attempt to explain what the ayah means by Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. If you have come or if you still remember, the 183 Surah Al-Baqarah identifies 3 or 4 different categories. First, the speech or the call is directed Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Kutiba alaykum as-siyam. That fasting has been made an obligation for you. That's the second category. What is fasting? In the same manner that it was made obligation for the nations before you, that's a claim by Quran that we have to assess the historical fact. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ as the final goal of the fasting of the month, so that you may gain taqwa. In the first part, trying to understand what is meant or who are these muttaqeen or mu'minun that ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, I discussed that any attempt, because mu'minun is part of a group of people invariably the conversation has to start from what do we mean by people and how we define them. If we purely, as the literature, materialistic literature or this worldly goes, we purely identify humans as a member of Homo sapiens. The only difference that they have with the rest of the animal kingdom happen to be superior intellectual power. Then it doesn't make much with room for the concept of Iman. Islam, on the other hand, made this clear right from the beginning, that the story of Genesis have been unpacked, that this unique creature has something within it that the rest of the creature world that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created does not have. It's the mix that exists between what we call the material and the spiritual. Now, various narratives are used to explain this. Clearly states that we took a piece of clay and we blew into it. It's a metaphorical use of language or simile to simplify the issue that humans by definition are complex creatures. So under that definition, who becomes a believer? This was the issue that I touched upon last night. That every believer has to have a number of traits and characteristics that one could define them into whether personal, social, etc., etc. One of the issues that in the month of fasting we have been asked to, and if you go back to Khutbah Sha'baniyah, stressed on this issue again, is the ailment of the tongue. And when the speech becomes corrupt. Last night I used the story of the Majnoon and the camel as a elucidate this issue of the complex and the tension that exists between nafs and soul, nafs and ruh. Rumi in his book talks about this in detail, but he uses this parable that there is a conflict between nafs ammara and the elevation. He says that Rumi, Majnoon being a mythical figure, but at least is used in a number of literature. Majnoon, a person that is beloved and besotted by Layla, constantly wants to move towards being close to the beloved. As a camel. The camel has a calf. The calf is at home. So he rides the camel towards Layla. But as soon as he begins to daydream and loosens the rein, the camel's attention is back home, where the calf is. So gently the camel, it turns around and walks backward. Goes straight back to the home. Once he comes out of his daydreaming, he realizes that the camel has gone back, so he starts the journey again. And ultimately he concludes, Rumi concludes, that there is inherent, what we call some kind of a conflict between nafs ammara and elevation. As long as we loosen the rein, this is his conclusion. As long as we loosen the rein and we allow and permit the nafs ammara to take control, we are shackled to this world only. Once we have full control, reign of the nafs, and control it fully, then we can direct the nafs to any direction that we want. One of the fundamental problems that we see in our literature stressed upon is what we call the ailment of the tongue, because then it becomes some kind of a part of that control that nafs ammara has on ourselves. Nobody can deny, as we said, the power of articulation for human being. Even in our definition, we have a clear outline that this notion of bayan for human being is unique. Ar-Rahman, Quran, خلق الإنسان علمه البيان, gave the power of articulation, language, to express the deep inner thought is unique to human being. No one can deny it. The problem that we have is that this power of articulation could become constructive or could become destructive, like everything else. It could become the mean of elevation to heaven, where all humans deserve, that's the ultimate point, or you use it negatively or improperly and you reach asfal as-safilin that the Quran talks about. How can we control? The verse that I read earlier with regard to backbiting is one of the diseases. If you look at literature on what we call the diseases of the tongue, experts and scholars on irfan and akhlaq, they talk about it. There are lists of them. One of them is backbiting. So if we go back to the literature, what do we find? Nahj al-Balagha in particular, I strongly recommend brothers and sisters read it. Cannot understand Arabic. Extensively, Amir al-Mu'mineen Salatullah Salam alayhi in Nahj al-Balagha talks about the problem of the tongue and how it should be controlled. During the month of Ramadan, it's supposed to be the fast itself to create a conducive environment where we can control this tongue and rein it. Because under normal circumstance, outside these months, we really have no control over it. It dictates. If we put all the literature together, we come across a number of different categories. Number one is the importance of the power of articulation and language. Speech is the measure of one human's identity. ما الإنسان لولا اللسان, if articulation was there, what is either an image which is exemplified outside or an animal which is ignored. So power of language, we come across this. تكلموا تعرفوا. Open your mouth and your true identity comes out. ما أضمر أحد شيئا إلا ظهرت في فلتات لسانه وصفحات وجهه. I mean, today in Freudian psychoanalysis, we hear about the Freudian slip. Amir al-Mu'mineen talks about the same thing here. If you want to understand what is happening deep down into somebody's character, search for slip-ups in the tongue, in the speech. Unintentional comments that sometimes, whoops, it comes out, gives a lot of hint about what is happening inside you. ما أضمر أحد شيئا إلا ظهر في فلتات لسانه وصفحات وجهه. Not only slip up in language, facial expressions also tell a lot. When you speak to someone and then suddenly the body goes into spasm, it shows that you don't need the person to tell you that they don't like you. That the spasm tells you that there is tension here. There is a conflict of interest. When you meet someone and the face immediately goes white. This indicates fear. When the pen, suddenly you see this blushing of the face and the redness, indicates something else. So, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, try to hide as much as you can. But sometimes unintentionally it comes out. That's the Freudian slip. And sometimes lisanul aqil, this is a framework. Amir al-Mu'mineen actually sets a standard. lisanul aqil wara'u qalbih wa qalbul munafiq wara'u lisanih. And then he explains, لأن العاقل إذا أراد أن يتكلم بكلام تدبره في نفسه. A wise guy, the heart of the kalam of a wise guy is behind his heart. When the wise person wants to speak, thinks, is this the right time for saying this? Is this going to harm someone? Is this going to disrespect someone? Is it backbiting? Is it a forbidden act? You go through a lengthy process. Once I remember I came across a hadith. This morning I tried to search from my references. I couldn't find it. It's narrated from Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salam alayhi that says, I wish I had a neck as long as a camel. And then he was asked why. He said, as the speech travels the distance between the bottom of the neck to the top of the neck, when I'm going to say it, I have enough time to think whether it is the right time to say it. لأن العاقل إذا أراد أن يتكلم بكلام تدبره في نفسه فإن كان خيرا أبداه وإن كان شرا وراه. The wise guy thinks and then assesses the situation and the environment. Am I going to say something that is what we call elevating or pushes me down? Harm someone or no, make someone happy? Is it truth? Is it falsehood? Etc. etc. والمنافق, or sometimes الجاهل يتكلم بما أتى على لسانه لا يدري ماذا له وماذا عليه. It's the expression that says fires first, then asks question later. There's no control over one's power of speech. Says it, whether it's in the right place, it's not in the right place, it's harmful, it's not harmful, it's irrelevant. How do we go about controlling? And we have other hadith as well. Sometimes we see metaphors being used in this, in trying to explain this. اعلم إن اللسان كلب عقور إن خليته عقر. It's a biting dog or a wild dog. If you permit it, it bites. A wise person has full control on his tongue. من حفظ لسانه ستر الله عورته. You control your tongue, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would protect what you want to hide. إذا أصبح ابن آدم. This is now a different category where lisan or speech becomes destructive. إذا أصبح ابن آدم أصبحت الأعضاء كلها. All faculties, they all wake up. And they all plead to the tongue. For God's sake, if you stay on the right path, then all of us are okay. But if you start deviating, then it causes problem for the rest of us. We pay the price. Ghiba that I talked about, repeatedly mentioned it during the few nights, is one of the ailments of the tongue that unfortunately we have to deal with. It's one of those ailments that comes out of being unable to control your tongue. For various reasons, we seem to find it very easy to somehow demean others. قال أبو ذر سألت رسول الله ما الغيبة. I asked the Holy Prophet, what is backbiting? فقال ذكرك أخاك بما يكره. When you mention something about your brother or a sister that he or she doesn't like. فقلت يا رسول الله فإن كان فيه الذي يذكر به. The characters that I'm talking about, this brother or a sister is there, and I'm talking about it. فقال أعلم إنك إذا ذكرته بما هو فيه فقد اغتبته. If that he or she possesses what you are saying, then it's ghiba. But if that person does not possess, it's a slander, it's tuhma. And both of them are haram because both of them demean somebody's character. It's character assassination. That verse, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا, that again itself uses a metaphor or a simile of bringing in, does any one of you like to eat the flesh of his or her dead brother or sister? To bring this notion of detestation that we really don't like it. Then how can you go around and assassinate somebody else's character? Now, there are a number of other hadith. It is an ailment of the tongue that we have to address. But how do we go about it? Month of Ramadan is a critical month. If you look at the literature that the scholars have put together regarding how to control this ailment or how to deal with it, number one, even Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi in his Nahj al-Balagha says it, without relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing can be gained. Even when you try to correct yourself, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. Read Sahif al-Sajjadiyya, Imam Zain al-Abidin, constantly ask, oh Lord, help me to correct my tongue. Help me to get over the negative habits. Help me so that I stand on the right path. Help me so I become respectful and humble, etc., etc. Number one, you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number two, silence. One of the problems that we have, we can't remain silent. As soon as we open our mouth, we want our eyes, we want to talk. Right, wrong, helpful, not helpful, elevating, descending, it doesn't matter. So number one, where the scholars focus upon, if you go these days to any scholar of akhlaq, that's the first thing that they tell you. A long period of silence. You begin to develop control over your tongue. Speak only if one needs to speak. I know it's free, but because once you have no control, then anything comes out. So speak only when one needs to speak. Number two, think before you speak. What is said, is it beneficial or harmful? Do not say anything. There is a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Do not say everything, and do not say anything about the things that you don't know, and do not say everything about that you know. It has to be proportional and very economic. Do not say anything if you have nothing nice to say, and then take few moments before you begin talking. Environment, it's critical. Pick your friends wisely. If the environment that you put yourself into, whether brothers or sisters, this notion of backbiting, lying, slander becomes habitual. Even if you resist it, من عاشر قوما 40 يوما صار منهم. You put yourself into this destructive environment, no matter how much resistance you have, occasionally you will slip. And those enough. Environment. So pick up your friend or acquaintances wisely. If you think, if you were to associate with certain group of people, committing sins or a slip up is easy with them, you don't need them, stay away. Why is it in Khutbah Sha'baniyah, the Holy Prophet said, نومكم فيها عبادة. When you are asleep, is considered worship because you don't say anything. You go through this process of learning. Muraqabah, keep an eye on yourself. Those days in Najaf, we were given small notebooks by our professors. Every time you talk, write it down to see what you have said. Collect them up. At night, you sit and be judge of yourself. Before the day of judgment comes and somebody opens the book and put it in front of you, اقرأ كتابك. You read your own book. حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. At the end of the night, you sit in judgment of your own deed. And see, what have you done during the day? What have we done during the day? 24 hours. Don't we know? Amir al-Mu'mineen says, نَفَسُ الْمَرْءِ خُطَاهُ إِلَى مَوْتِهِ. Every breath that you take, you are a step closer to death. 24 hours gone, 24 hours closer to death. What have we done? Another day of month of Ramadan, a golden opportunity for us to correct ourselves, passed by, and nothing. We are still asleep. This is why Amir al-Mu'mineen sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, النَّاسُ نِيَامْ إِذَا مَا تُنْتَبَ. We are all sleepwalking. When we are put into that small place, then we wake up. Muraqabah. Humble yourself by apologizing. Every time you make a mistake, you backbite, you lie, or you do anything, don't wait. Immediately go to the person and ask for forgiveness. Oh brother, oh sister, I did this. I need your forgiveness. Once you apologize, humble yourself, nafs begin to feel uncomfortable. Reinforcement, accountability at night. Writing logs every day, every moment, even sometimes punishing yourself. Remember Tawbah that we talked about a few nights ago? That now the flesh that you have gained, disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to melt through obedience, and then something new to be generated. Logbook. Start small, couple of hours. Promise yourself couple of hours, and don't then gradually add to it. And persistent. Something that has become habitual over a long period of time, as we were discussing a couple of nights ago, is not going to disappear overnight. It requires persistence. Ask your friends, your brothers and your sisters within the environment that you have to watch out for the slip-up. Don't listen to ghiba, because you will have the same kind of punishment as the person who is doing it if you don't say anything. The least you can do, you can't change it, walk away. Protect yourself. This month, during fasting, constantly being watchful, controlling ourselves, most of the ailment, if you go to Marhum Das Ghaib has a book on sins, and he lists over 25 ailment of the tongue. from tuhma to riba to lying, etc., etc., etc. So we really need to pay attention during this month, because if we were to leave this month without having some kind of change, then as Khutbah Sha'baniyah says, we have gained nothing on the spiritual side beyond the physical benefit of hunger and thirst. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and our shortcomings, inshallah, and to help us in this endeavor. And really it's a struggle. This is why the Holy Prophet, when the battalion came back to Medina, he says, Marhaba, welcome to those who finish Jihad al-Asghar, and Jihad al-Akbar is to be confronted. And when they said, Ya Rasulullah, what is Jihad al-Akbar? Jihad al-Nafs is to be able to control your ego. It's very hard and requires persistent, long-term planning, etc., etc. Let's recite Surah Al-Fatiha for the soul of those who have died during the past few weeks. And inshallah we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in whatever is left of the month. 1 week already gone. The 2 or 3 weeks that are left. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Questions? You want to distribute them now? Okay. You want? There's a question, it's more of a juristic question regarding traveling and coming to this state from other places. The ruling regarding traveling is clear. If you travel more than, say, 17 miles, and you, after that 17 miles, particularly if it is outside the city and you're going to a different state, you technically are considered to be a traveler. And fasting, according to the verse in the Holy Quran, is quite clear, you don't need to fast. Once you get to a particular place, say in this case coming from Kentucky and coming to Michigan, if the person comes to Michigan and intends to stay in this place for a minimum of 10 days, consecutive days, then the moment they reach here, they make the intention of staying and they continue with the fasting, as long as they are staying 10 days or more. But if a person is not sure whether they are going to stay here for 10 days or more, they continue with the status of being a traveler. There is no fast for them, unless it happens that after a while they establish a few days gone by, and then the person says, no, I intend to stay for 10 days, then they start fasting from there. If they still travel within this period, so they make an intention that, yes, I'm going to stay here for 10 days, they start fasting, and then within 2 days they have to travel somewhere else, those 2 days are fine. But what happens after, they become a traveler again, musafir, which they have no fast whatsoever. Is it okay to eat a couple of minutes after the time of imsak during suhoor? Well, the time of imsak is a precautionary time which is added. Some people believe in it, some people don't. In areas where we don't have access to a clear ufuq that we can establish subh al-sadiq, it's a matter of precaution, normally 15 or 20 minutes before the prayer. we are asked to stop and refrain from eating, so that in case, because of inability to establish the ufuq, you don't fall into the time. Few seconds or few minutes immediately after that deadline is not a problem. But they certainly say when you get close to the time of the adhan, then it is problematic, because you may step over gray line. There was one question from the brother here. Okay. Yes, that's fine. The reason why I suggested, or we suggested the cards or the writing part, because I kept waiting for the sisters to write something or to ask something, and we thought that the sisters might feel uncomfortable to say verbally, and it might be easier for them to write it down. Otherwise, let's see. Before we address this one, let's address from live questions. Okay, you have this question here. Okay, I'll see it in a minute. Okay, brother. Yes, scholars of tafsir, and they say that whenever the context is the context of power, Allah refers to Allah's self as we, to indicate azama and jalal. Whenever it's the context of closeness and what we call love, then it is singular being used. I am close to you. وإذا سألك عبادي عني فقل إني قريب. But whenever there is a context of power, it's we being used. So this is why when you look at the context of the we, is totally different from the context of the I. If any of the audience can share personal experiences which they have mistakes and had to deal with it apologizing. So I'm not quite sure if any one of the audience can share personal experiences with how they made mistakes and how to deal with it, apologizing or humble themselves. Well, I think these are personal issues. We can certainly learn from their experience and how they dealt with it. But whether they feel comfortable in public coming and admitting that, in most cases, it's much better to be addressed on a personal basis. So if I backbite somebody, I am the one who would go to the person and say, look, I have done it. I don't need to be public about it. But I should certainly, as a part of humility, to go and ask for forgiveness, no matter what it is. Yes. Mm. Yeah, this is much more expansive kind of issue that we need to address. We certainly know within our own community that if not all of us, most of us have shortcomings. There are individuals, whether it is in the bringing up a family or dealing with shortcomings, that they have succeeded in coming up with a unique framework in achieving their goal. We certainly need to hear from these individuals as to how they have done it, so the rest of us, it becomes a kind of a model that we can imitate, or the rest of us can imitate in our lives. If we have, we certainly would like to hear from those who have done this. And by the way, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago before month of Ramadan regarding those who have succeeded in bringing up right children in this environment. What was their approach? How did they do it? That their kids remain with them and on the right path. We would like to hear from them. It says if I travel from here, say if I live in, my position is in Dearborn, and then if I go to Windsor, Canada, would I pray 2 or 4 rak'ah for Isha? I follow whether it's Sayyid Khamenei or anybody else. Once you go outside the distance, what we call Hadd al-Tarakhus, which is around, some people say 15, but ihtiyat, by being on the side of ihtiyat, 17 miles, then Isha is going to be 2 rak'at, unless you reach a destination in which you intend to stay within that destination 10 days or more. Okay? Yeah, the scholars have debated this, and they say it's the county. In major, enormous cities, the county is the one that you have. Say you live within the Wayne County. The moment you come out of the Wayne County and you move into a different county, that's the beginning of you counting your distances. So let's say you live in Dearborn Heights. If you go 5 miles down to the west, Wayne County, for argument's sake, Wayne County comes to an end and you enter into a different county. Doesn't matter. I mean, the masaf. So once you come out of the Wayne County, that's where you start counting your masafa. So if you travel from there to Canada, which is across the water, another 20 miles that you have gone, you certainly have gone from here, from the county, the distance that you need to become Musafa. If that's where Wayne County ends, I'm not quite sure. That's why I said, for argument's sake. Yes, what you need to do. No. In the fatwa is that in major big cities that contain many counties, and you live in one of them, the moment the time or the space or the place where you start counting your distances, your miles, is from the end of your county, wherever you are located. If after that you move 20 miles or 17 miles or 15 miles, then you are technically musafir and it becomes 2 rak'ah. There are a couple of exceptions. Number one, for somebody that when you move to the new place, you intend to stay there for 10 days. So that you have to do it. Or what they call man shughluhu safar or kathiru safar. These are 2 other criteria. If somebody is, I am a truck driver, and I constantly move around. This is my job. My job is to travel around. Then I have to fast, no matter which direction I go or how many miles I go. Kathiru Safar is a different category. If I constantly travel from my home to Windsor on a regular basis, at least 3 times a week, then I become Kathiru Safar. If I go to Windsor, this journey only, because that's the one that I travel quite a lot, then I have to do it tamam. But if tomorrow I decided to go to North Michigan, which is not the same journey that I regularly go, I become Musafir immediately as I move out of the Wayne County. If you could wait, brother, let me. So this is done. Is pointing out someone's negative trait to their face considered slander or character assassination or constructive criticism? Depends on how you do it. جادلهم بالتي هي أحسن. You can always go to somebody respectfully and humbly explain to them that, look, this is what I saw from you, and I think you should do something about it. Here there is a story about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein, salawatullah salam alayhim. They saw an old man doing his wudu. His wudu wasn't correct. So rather than to go to this old man and says, old man, what are you doing? By now you should be able to do your wudu and so on, becoming disrespectful. What did they do? They asked the old man to become a judge for them to do their wudu. So they said, can you please keep an eye on our wudu, 2 kids. We do our wudu and then you tell us which one is correct, which one isn't. Being a wise guy, immediately realized that they were trying to tell him, but in a totally different way. You can always go to someone and be insulting, condescending, etc., etc., and you can always become respectful. Go in and say, look, I have seen this. Pull that person aside. When you see something in Jama'ah, the person is still not following the general ruling in Sujda, Ruku' or Qiyam or something else. They have what I call the itch syndrome. You're supposed to stand during Hamd and Surah steady. As soon as you say Allahu Akbar, the hand goes behind the back, scratching the back here and there. They may not know it. Pull them aside and say, brother, sister, this is not what it should be done, etc., etc. So it can be constructive if you do it gently and you choose the right word and the proper approach with etiquette. It could become destructive if you really go out in bashing somebody down and demeaning. There was a question in the back. Brother, you raise your hand. I can't hear you. There is an echo here. It's a good question. Depends on whether you have given up residency in that town or place or not. If you still consider that a second home. Yes, I was born in a house, say in Windsor, for the sake of argument. But 50 years ago, 60 years ago, or 100 years ago, now I have no relation and no connection to it. The mere fact that I was born in Windsor is not enough that when I go back for the second time, then I have to do tamam. If you still have connection to that town, your parents are living there, families are living there, and it's a second home for you, you go there, then fine. But if no, you have given up residency in that town many years ago, no, it's a new situation, and the idea of the many days, etc., applies to you. Would it not be considered backbiting for one to speak about the historical background of a personality, an evil personality that committed act of sin, such as Yazid and Muawiyah and so on? Certainly not, because the criteria given what they say al-mutajahiru bil-fisq. somebody who is openly goes out and does something sinful and so on, and cares less about what other people say, this is part of the exception from the rule, but it's not considered that. What time is it now? Okay, so we can call it a day for the time being, and inshallah we will meet again tomorrow night. Please, if you have, last year when I was lecturing at Majma, it was later in the evening, the QAs was very proactive, and a lot of people asked questions, and sometimes we use those questions for a topic of conversation and lecture for the nights, the future nights. Here I don't get that kind of question, and people come out and ask question, or they send an email. If you have any topic that you really would like to be picked up as a theme for conversation, please either give it to me during the night here, or at least few of the issue of violence at home was one repeatedly have been asked to address it. During the Sunday lecture that we had, we briefly touched upon it. But again, if you think that there is an issue that you would like to be discussed, please let me know in advance, and I'll make preparation inshallah for it. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.